What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked In Sports Podcast. I'm William Locke, and joining me today for our 2025 New York Mets season preview is Luis Barranco. Luis, how's it going?
I mean, we got to talk about the other team in New York, the team that many people resort to as the second team. Not the first team, but the second team. Let's get that out there. The team that people don't know is actually New York, the little brother.
You just got every Mets fan that tuned in to turn this podcast right off. I guess we should preface this with the fact that I am a Yankee fan, but I am coming at this podcast with complete objectivity. We did a good job with the Red Sox one. I did go under on the Red Sox, but I am optimistic about them. I'm optimistic about the Mets too. I'm interested in what they're going to do this season, of course. But they are always in the shadow of the Yankees no matter what they do.
They are the Clippers of Major League Baseball. You know, super much parallels. The Yankees have the Steinbrenners, the Lakers have the Buses, the Clippers had Sterling, and the Mets before that had I think I can't remember his name, and I want to be correct.
The Wilpon family.
The Wilpon family.
Let's not compare them to Steve Ballmer, though. I mean,
and now we have Cohen, which is Ballmer.
Not Steve Ballmer. Let's not compare them to the former. We're not even gonna say his name, Donald Sterling.
Yeah. But there's a whole FX series. I know FX got on a high horse where they decided to make sports documentaries, and they did one for Aaron Hernandez, and they had a fun fact. You know who actually a famous actor's son turned politician's son is acting in that show?
The Schwarzenegger's son?
Yeah, he's in White Lotus, which, by the way, I recommend everybody should watch White Lotus. But that's a little off topic. We're talking about the Mets. We're talking about the Cohen Mets, the Cohen tax. I think, for as much flack as we give the Mets, they're actually showing an impact in baseball today. Like, we're having the Cohen tax rules. Like, so many rules are getting implemented for the Mets. Not the Dodgers, but the Mets.
It is interesting that it's worked out that way. The reaction to Steve Cohen taking over the Mets and implementing some new luxury tax thresholds. Even though, the Mets have spent, but they haven't spent at the level the Dodgers have. The Mets actually, despite bringing in Juan Soto this year, who they're paying an absolute fortune, their payroll went down year over year, only by $4 million, and it's still an extremely high payroll. Fangraphs has them projected at $332 million this year. Last year, they were at $336 million. So a slight drop, with the addition of paying Soto $61 million a year. I think that's kind of impressive. That's the story with the Mets this offseason. Obviously, they brought in Juan Soto, 15 years, $765 million. Just not really any deferrals. I don't think there's any deferrals in that deal. Just an insane contract. We talked about it at length this offseason and even in some of these other preview podcasts. That's the story. Go ahead.
You know what the number? So how much did Soto sign for?
765.
765. So Juan Soto's contract equates to the defense budget of Luxembourg.
Which honestly, again, I mean, certain countries, the United States, pays so much money on our defense budget that the $765 million just pales in comparison. But it seems like a lot of money for Luxembourg. I mean, considering how small it is, I didn't even know they had an army.
Yeah, I know you're a historian, but doesn't the contract increase? There's a kicker that goes up to 815, correct?
The
Soto deal, yeah.
I'd have to pull it up.
So if that kicker actually happens, that Juan Soto's contract would be higher than the defense budget of the Dominican Republic, his home country. So Juan Soto's total contract, if he has that kicker that goes up to $815 million, would have a higher contract value than the defense budget of the Dominican Republic. He can fund the army for 1 year of his home country. How crazy is that?
Yeah, he can opt out after 2029. The Mets can void it by adding $4 million to each of the last 10 years. So they can, if he doesn't opt out, or if they want him to, he can opt out, but basically, if he were to opt out, the Mets can void said opt out and add $4 million to each of the last 10 years, which would be $40 million. Quick maths. So yeah, you'd be at over $800 million.
Yeah, so it'd be pretty close to the defense budget for his home country. Talk about a contract that will transcend baseball for years on years. As we enter this season and next offseason and beyond, like his number is like market value, which is for a lot of New York contracts. And that's why we're going to see a lot of trades, thankful to the Mets, like the impact that the Mets are finally making on baseball that they haven't made in years. Like, granted, the Mets don't make an impact on baseball. They've just been the lowly Mets. The Cohen Mets are making an impact on baseball that will shape contracts and just team spending for our lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think, though, the Soto deal was so unique in this because he was so young, 26 years old. You know, Ohtani probably could have gotten more, but he's so committed to winning that he kind of took less, deferred a lot of money. But, you know, maybe like a Vlad Jr., he's not going to get Soto money, but he's going to get a lot because he's so young. Some of these guys that come up early that haven't re-signed, like maybe a Gunnar Henderson, probably not. If Jackson Holiday goes nuclear, like Soto was just such a unique circumstance because he came up to the major leagues when he was like 19 years old, was playing in the World Series at age 20. Like we don't really see it that often. It's pretty rare for a guy to be a free agent this early. So I don't know if it'll happen again, but he did, and I just don't know how much of a market he actually set.
I think like teams are going to be in response. Like we've already seen like the Mets have an impact with how the Astros are doing it with Kyle Tucker. They're just like, we're not going to be able to pay it. And then Vlad Jr. probably is next. And I bet you teams like the Reds are shaking in their boots with Ellie De La Cruz, seeing like what's going to happen next. But this is the New York Mets podcast. We're going to Queens today. We're going to go to Citi Field. I don't know. You haven't been to Citi Field, right?
Yeah, I have.
What is your thoughts about Citi Field?
It's fine. I unfortunately never got out to Shea, so I don't have that comparison. It's nice. It's definitely nice. It's kind of, it's out near LaGuardia, obviously. It's right next to where they have the U.S. Open, which nice tennis grounds over there. But it's a decent stadium. I don't think it's anything to write home about.
LaGuardia is pretty cool. No, I mean Citi Field. Citi Field's right on top of LaGuardia. I went to Shea. I got the opportunity to go see Shea, and I was able to go see the Apple go up and down. Mm-hmm. So, like any old ballpark, it was old. Needed a new remaking. But hey, let's talk about this team. It's a new chapter. I'm gonna go through the lineup. I mean, this lineup I think it's top heavy. Has a lot of question marks. They're headed by David Stearns, which very interesting hire that I think you'll talk about more. He's the president of baseball operations. He used to be work for the Milwaukee Brewers as the general manager, and he was there from 2015 to 2022. So he was an architect of those really good Brewers teams, made that money stretch, which I feel like that's going to be a big topic of our podcast today. At short, you got Francisco Lindor. Right, Juan Soto. First base, Pete Alonso. Left field, Brandon Nimmo. Third baseman, Mark Vientos. Jesse Winker at DH. Jose Siri at center. Brett Beatty at second. And Luis Torrens at catcher. I think the biggest thing here to note is that they do have a lot of injuries with Jeff McNeil, who strained his oblique and will not be ready for opening day. Ronnie Mauricio had knee surgery last year, and he's working his way back up. Nick Madrigal fractured his shoulder, unfortunately, in spring training after he signed recently in January. And then Francisco Alvarez also broke his hand. He had a hamate injury. And for those that remember the hamate surgery injury, that was the same one that Andrew Benintendi had on the Yankees, and also Mike Trout had, I believe it was 2 years ago. And so Starling Marte is on the bench. He's one of the guys that's very interesting to talk about. And then top prospect, Luis Angel Acuna, which is related to Ronald Acuna Jr. I believe it's his cousin or brother. You can double check that for me.
Yeah, it's one of the two.
Yeah, one of the two. which is interesting, just knowing that the Braves are in the same division. Rotational wise, Clay Holmes been announced as the opening day starter. I know William will have a lot to say about Mr. Clay Holmes with the new kick change. Cody Senga at the second pitcher, David Peterson, Tyler Megill, and Griffin Canning. In the bullpen, you have Edwin Sugar Diaz as your closers, set up by AJ Minter, who they acquired via free agency from Atlanta. Other guys of note, they have Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, and Paul Blackburn as a long reliever. Again, more injuries to the rotation, which I think is kind of a theme here at spring training for them. Sean Manaea has a sprained oblique, and then Frankie Montas strained his lat. So they do not look to be ready to start the season out, especially Frankie Montas. Christian Scott, who I really do like as a pitcher, I like his stuff, had Tommy John surgery here in September, so he will not be playing a factor to this roster this year. William, take it away. What is your thoughts? Give me your whole lowdown right here. For a team that was top 10 in most hitting categories except for average and stolen base, and for a team that was in the middle of the pack with their pitching and relief.
Yeah, let's start with the rotation because I think that's where the most question marks are. You mentioned the injuries, Montas, Manaea. Manaea was probably going to be their opening day guy. I think that's who they had slated heading into spring training. Obviously, didn't work out that way. But on the bright side for them, Clay Holmes, a move that we questioned this offseason because he was going to be moving into a starter role. He's looked great in spring training. You mentioned the kick change, nasty pitch. He was good for the Yankees in pretty much every single role except the closer role. And even at times he was good as a closer. He last year was kind of just a bit of a disaster, but he was actually good in the playoffs in relief. Moving him to a starter role, it seems like he's been able to take on the workload. I know it's just spring training. We'll see if he can do it over, 20 plus starts this season. I'm actually optimistic. I know it's just spring training, but it's kind of changed my approach to what I expect from Clay Holmes this year. So I actually think he's going to be good there. But after that, we'll see when Montas comes back with the oblique, or sorry, Montas with the lat, Manaea with the oblique. We'll see when they return. They do need those guys as reinforcements coming back. Those will be huge additions when they are back. I'm really high on Kodai Senga. I know last year he was banged up, didn't pitch much at all. I think he only had one start and then pitched in the postseason. But his rookie year of 2023, he pitched to a 2.98 ERA, finished 7th in Cy Young voting and 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting, and was an all-star. Like, he's a really good pitcher. He's got the ghost fork, full year of Senga healthy. I think Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga as a 1-2 to start the season is still pretty solid. Then that's when you get into the question marks with Peterson, Megill, and Canning. And you got Blackburn in there. One of those guys maybe be a long reliever because, Megill's the only guy. Well, Megill and Peterson have options left, but I don't think either of them will be sent down to the minors. Diaz back at closer is huge. I like the addition of AJ Minter into the bullpen. Guy that's got playoff experience with the Braves. Ryan Stanek's solid. There's some other question marks in terms of mid-relief, but I think the back half of their bullpen is pretty solid. It's just really the second half of that rotation depth early on in the season that there are some question marks. But I do think once they get Manaea and Montas back, hopefully they're healthy. I think, Manaea, Montas, Clay Holmes, and Kodai Senga, even though on paper they don't have like an ace, a workhorse guy, I think they're still going to be a pretty good starting pitching rotation.
I honestly am not that sold. I mean, there's going to be growing pains with Clay Holmes transitioning. Can he pitch the workload? Can he work his way out? I mean, you can probably, off your top of the head, how much has Clay Holmes pitched, like longest outing?
Yeah, I think 2-3 innings maybe in relief.
And they don't have that many innings eaters. So I feel like working into the season, they have to make an acquisition pitching wise, because you can't in this era of baseball, I keep saying, you need at least 7 to 8 guys to pitch you, all those innings that you have to pitch this year. That's just my thought process. There's 1,058 innings There's 1,458 innings that are pitched by a team. I would hold a number that you would want your starters to pitch 65 to 70% of that.
That's enough. Yeah.
You want that, and then you hopeful that that your bullpen can do the rest. I just don't know if they're deep enough and have guys to like do that. They're asking a lot with dudes that have been either hurt or have making this transition. It's tough. I don't know how you're going to be able to do it. And then you and me have both seen Frankie Montas. Like, he's not anything to write home about. Like, yes, could he be great? Yes, he's been great with the A's. But then we've seen so many of those injuries with the Yankees and him being up and down with the Reds. And with the Brewers, it was kind of nothing to write home about, essentially.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that struggled with injury his entire career. That is a fact.
That and the PEDs too. Like, let's keep it in mind. Like, it's pretty much like they're asking a lot about their pitching lab, which, hey, they've done great jobs in the past, but I think they're biting off a little bit more than they can chew here.
It is a project. There are a lot of question marks with the rotation. That's why I wanted to start with them in terms of roster, because that's where the season is going to be, I think, won or lost, especially when you're looking at Clay Holmes, because it's a guy that was a reliever, closer for the Yankees. Everyone was kind of baffled when they brought him in as a starter, but I mean, he's their opening day starter. It's crazy. And they're playing in Houston, which is interesting because the Yankees acquired Juan Soto last offseason and then opened up the season last year in Houston. The Mets acquired him this offseason, and now they're opening up the season in Houston. The Yankees made the World Series last year. They didn't win it, but they did make it. I don't know if that's correlated, but kind of interesting.
You know what happens when Juan Soto leaves your team, right?
What happens?
You make a run.
When he leaves your team?
Yeah, you make a run.
How so?
He left the Padres, and the Padres made a run.
That's the only example, though.
Yeah, but regardless, I'm not going to get in the Juan Soto thing, but I am not relying on these pitchers. And then Sean Manaea, yeah, he was good last year, but is he a number one starter for you for a World Series team?
He was a number one starter for a National League Championship Series team last year.
Yeah, that got lucky matchups that they got matched up with the Brewers, and then they got matched up and were able to beat the Phillies. And we've talked about it before, how, playing in division is pretty difficult. You guys know each other pretty well. It's playing your rival. You know each other more than anybody. It's like your brother. You know how to beat your brother up. You know how to push his buttons. You know how to pitch to them. You've seen them so many times that it's second nature. You can game plan and decide how you're going to pitch to them.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's tough.
Yeah. I mispronounced Griffin Canning's name earlier, by the way. It's Griffin Canning, not Canning.
Yeah. So, and then talk about the lineup. I mean, 1, 2, 3, great. Nemo's okay.
I put the top three up with any in the league.
I disagree. I don't think that top 3 is top 5 in the league at all.
Oh, wow. I think it's up there with the Dodgers.
Dodgers top 3 is better.
Dodgers top 3 is better, but I think it's in the conversation.
Atlanta's top 3 is just as good.
We'll do that podcast. I think that one's coming out tomorrow or the day after.
San Diego.
Mets.
You're telling me Fernando Tatis? Really?
The Mets have the 2 guys in Lindor and Soto that finished second in MVP voting. Sorry, second and third in MVP voting in the National League and American League last year.
I don't know. I'm just not as high as everybody with Lindor. And then Pete, we know what Pete is.
Pete's got to bounce back.
Pete's a power back. You and me both saw, like, that dude does not practice singles. Like, situational hitting for that guy is just yanking it all the way out. And you and me both saw his WBC batting practice. Like, that dude, the only thing he does is just yank balls all the way out to right, left, center. Like, spray the ground, spray.
Yeah, clutch home run against the Brewers, obviously against Devin Williams last year. He's got to have a bounce back year. He wasn't himself. He's kind of got a prove it deal 1 year with an option for next year. Yeah, probably if he has a good year, he's going to be a free agent again, which is interesting. He's 30. He's, in terms of Juan Soto, he's going to be hitting behind Soto. He's going to be protecting Soto. That's not Aaron Judge for Juan Soto. Juan Soto had the best protection he's going to have in his entire career. He had those, I'm not going to go there. He had extra protection. We'll just say that with Aaron Judge behind him. Pete Alonso is not that. Pitchers aren't going to be as afraid to pitch to Juan Soto this year because they don't have the MVP all world, one of the best hitters since, Barry Bonds. Not that Judge is Barry Bonds, but he's, at that level, maybe not even at that level, but he's in comparison. Pete Alonso is not that, is my point. And
but hey, it's not about those three. For me, I think if you're an elite hitter, you can do damage regardless.
True. True.
And I think it's more about Vientos downward, Vientos and Nimmo downward. Nimmo hit 224 last year with a slugging of 399.
Yeah, and he's been dealing with knee issues in spring training, which is a concern.
And then you have Vientos, who everybody thinks is like Babe Ruth reincarnated, or just think he's just like George Brett more so reincarnated.
Yeah, guys are so high on Brandon Nimmo. It's kind of, or not Brandon Nimmo, Vientos. It's kind of crazy.
And then Jesse Winker, you're like, yeah, he's a great player, but I don't know if Jesse Winker is. You saw he was great with the Reds, and he was bad with the Brewers, and he was okay with the Nats, and they had a good run last year with the Mets. I just don't know. Jose Siri in there for straight defense. I mean, Citi Field is a big ballpark out there. That center field is big, and then Brett
Siri will be platooning with Tyrone Taylor.
Brett Beatty, Luis Torrens, can they get you through? Can a 33-year-old Jeff McNeil get you through? And, Francisco Alvarez but when he's healthy, but then can Francisco Alvarez be that guy and continue his ascension as one of the top 5 catchers in the game? I don't know. I just don't think this lineup is that good as people make it out to be. Like, they had no hitter over 300. And the only hitter that hit over 275 in this lineup last year was Juan Soto.
Yeah, I mean, the back half of the lineup isn't great, but I don't think you can underestimate how good Juan Soto is.
Yeah, but it's just like baseball's a team sport. You do understand, like, it's more than just one player. I mean, I think you would just walk Juan Soto and just be like, cool. He's probably going to lead the league in walks.
Again,
I think teams will probably go at Pete Alonso and make Pete Alonso beat you. Like, they would rather take a 2-run shot than having to go through the meat grinder that is Juan Soto.
Yeah, and that's the point I was trying to make with Judge last year. Guys weren't just going to pitch around Soto and get to Judge. Like, that's just ludicrous. So good luck. It's not Judge. So enjoy Pete Alonso, who strikes out a million times. I still think they're good. I know there's a lot of question marks with the back half of the lineup, and already got the injuries. There are concerns, but I think they're good. I don't think that's crazy to say.
I don't think that's a good number. Like, they're right now they won 89 last year, and their over under is 90.5. DraftKings, not sponsored, but hopefully sponsored soon. The crown is yours. I don't know.
What's your pick?
What's your pick? I want to hear yours. Are you going to take over 90.5? 90.5 is like elite in baseball. Like, you are the cream of the crop. And especially in their division and how good the NL is this year, are you going to really go 90.5 with this team?
I'm going over because I like them better than the Braves this year. Spoiler alert for the Braves podcast. That's coming up soon.
And I'm taking the under. I think they have way more question marks than people actually think. And I think Juan Soto is just he's just like that flex seal on their issues. Sorry for the people's ears and for William that has to edit this soon, but
it worked for the Yankees last year. Juan Soto helped cover up a lot of that team's cracks. Now,
the Yankees had way better pitching, way better bullpen, way better rotation, and I think there are other guys. For as much as you we crap on them are better than the Yankees' other guys. The Yankees' other guys are better than the Mets' other guys. Like Jazz Chisholm or Jeff McNeil. That's pretty much a push. It's pretty much, are you taking the floor with Jeff McNeil or are you taking the upside with Jazz Chisholm?
Right.
Okay. Austin Wells or Francisco Alvarez. That's pretty much the same, but Austin Wells was the rookie of the year. Okay.
Well, he was in the running. It was Heel.
Yeah, Heel. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That's one. What else am I missing? Giancarlo Stanton, a healthy Giancarlo Stanton is probably the best power bat in the game, next to Pete Alonso when healthy.
Healthy Giancarlo Stanton is like prime Barry Bonds. In the playoffs last year, dude was insane.
Okay. He probably ended his whole career last year. He probably sold himself just to win one World Series. Yeah, no, but in regards to this team, you're over, I'm under this year. It remains to be seen what happens with the Mets this year in the NL East. Citi Field should be popping after their Cinderella run last year. I personally will not make it up to a Mets game, but I don't know if you will. If you want to, you're going to go see the Mets, but hey.
I might go to the Mets in Wrigley just to boo Juan Soto.
Are you going to go sit in right field and boo
I
him?
don't know. I already looked. It's at the very end of the season, so probably not at that point.
He's probably going to do load management, or he probably won't go because his family doesn't have a box seat to put him in. And so
I saw some Yankee fan was heckling him in spring training, and then he came up and hit a home run right to him. So I just feel like when he gets booed in Yankee Stadium at the end of May, he's going to hit like 3 home runs.
Hey, we hope that the Yankees win because I cannot stand this guy. It's crazy. It's crazy enough that a guy that's making $800 billion doesn't say, who do you believe the best player in baseball is? He doesn't say himself. He says, Fernando Tatis. Gasses up Fernando Tatis. He's saying that Fernando Tatis is even better. And I've said it before. Fernando Tatis is a top 5 MLB, top 3 MLB player.
We have him top 5. I think we put him 7th or 8th in our list.
Yeah, but I think he's top 5, top 3. We have to be politically correct these days. I'm not trying to do no hot takes. I'm not trying to get clipped up on Twitter, But I believe platinum glove, steals bases, hits 40-plus home runs, as Juan Soto would say, in Petco Park, which is a pitcher's park. Imagine if you put him in Yankee Stadium or in a little league park that is Fenway. Or put him with the Windy City, with the wind up at Wrigley.
Crawford boxes.
Dude would go nuclear. But in regards to that wraps up our Mets preview. Williams over. I am under. Best case scenario, they can get to the World Series. Worst case scenario, we said they're an 80-win team, and they missed the playoffs, 80-win range-ish. So hopefully we get to see a lot of Mets games. They're going to be the talk. William, where are we going to tomorrow?
Phillies. We got Josh Doring on.
Josh is always a pleasure to have on the podcast. One of my favorite guests, up there with Doring and Andrew as my favorite guests, and Alden.
Yep.
So pretty much everybody. Yeah. So pretty much
everybody. We love everybody.
We love guests on the podcast. But thank you for listening to this edition of the Locked In Sports Podcast. My name is Luis Barranco. It is hosted by yours truly, William Locke. We'll see you tomorrow.
All righty. Catch you guys tomorrow for the Phillies. Peace.